Matter of fact, why don't I do that right now? I'll come down here. I'm going to ask another question. One of the myths that I hear is that Seventh-day Adventists believe that we're the only ones that are going to be in heaven. Do any of you believe that only Seventh-day Adventists are going to heaven? Okay, that's good. You talk to me later because I hear people say, oh, Adventists, they think that they're the only ones that are going. One reason I joined the church is I was pleased to finally find a group that said that they believe the largest part, matter of fact, this is something Ellen White says in the book Great Controversy, the greatest part, not the smallest part, the greatest part of Christ's true followers are in the fellowship of other denominations. I said, oh, that's refreshing. I don't agree with all the teachings, but God knows their hearts, and that there are many people in these other churches that love Him and they walk in the light they've got, and they're God's children, and His Spirit works in them, and God answers their prayers. But theologically, they may be wrong on some things. I'm in this church because I believe it's theologically closer to the Bible. But the Seventh-day Adventists, I think there's more to it than that.
Okay, so there we heard the part. I guess I jumped the gun a little bit there. There was the part where he said that, no, we believe that God's true people are in all sorts of denominations. And EJ, you did a good job of breaking down what they actually mean by that. But I want to look at a quote here from Ellen. This was written to a missionary from America, sent to England, and it was advice that she was giving on how to spread the Advent faith and message when you are in the minority in an area. This is from Manuscript Releases, Volume 17, page 334. Quote, the great prejudice of the Jewish nation of priests and rulers was stirred up against Christ because the people preferred to listen to Jesus rather than to them. So she's building an analogy here. The very same feelings of prejudice will be manifest in the priests and rulers of this time. We can do nothing that would close up the way before us in this country, like taking a position of superiority and putting before the people that we consider them heathen. In truth, they are worse than heathen. But this we are not to tell them. The clergy considers themselves as teachers, highly religious, and their churches send out missionaries to the work of converting the savages. But to have the implication that a similar work must be done for them, they would consider the worst kind of insult. Close quote. I see Adventists in the comments saying that, no, what you guys are doing here is, no, miss me with that. Right. Your prophetess taught that all other people outside of your small little flock are worse than heathens, that they don't have the special light given to them that was given to the Adventists. Mm-hmm. So miss me with this stuff about we're saying that we're reading into people's motives, and no, this is the facts. Doug is not being forthright here. This is the classic public presentation of Seventh-day Adventism to non-SDAs to cause them to think this group is really no different than everyone else, except they go to church on Saturdays. This is one of their biggest evangelistic tactics. I've watched them do this for years and years and years and years. This is a tactic that they use because in their minds, they think if we can just get them to start going to church on Saturdays, they'll have the seal. Mm-hmm. They don't care about if a person's Christologically orthodox. They don't care about if a person proselytizes a cursed gospel. They merely care about getting people in the door, getting them to keep the Sabbath on Saturday, and then proselytizing them down the path of the rose garden path of Adventism.
Mm-hmm. I was just talking, and I'm not going to say the person's in the chat, right? So I'm not going to say exactly who, but I was talking just on Sunday with this person, and they mentioned that they married into an SDA family, and what they were convinced on was first was the Sabbath, okay? This is standard practice, right? So if you ever go to an evangelistic meeting, back in my day, it was called Revelation Seminars back in the day, right?
Uh-huh.
Crusades, Net 95. Remember, Mark Finley was on the
Yep.
that satellites or whatever. That was kind of what you did. You know what I mean? You get them convinced on the Sabbath first and foremost, and then you kind of get them, and you always do it based on. Well, what we were taught anyway was that you kind of give them to the resurrection, right? So the preparation day, the day before the Sabbath, what day was Christ rise on? Easter Sunday. That's right. That's right. So the day before that would have been the seventh day, and then they jump over to Exodus and remember the Sabbath day, and people forget. So this is why the Lord told us to remember, and then you kind of get sucked into that. And if you do the proof texting, I like to call it prancing through the proof text. Miles calls it hopscotch, right? But that's one of those things that you do. And then so some people get convinced that way. And then from there, then you can indoctrinate with other things, right?
Right.
So they're not going to have you necessarily stop smoking right away. But then if you want to get baptized, that is one of the vows, right?
Yep.
You have to abstain from tobacco in all its forms, right? You have to abstain from narcotics and everything else like that. And I remember people having debates as to whether or not alcohol would entail not taking NyQuil and all this kind of stuff. It was like an actual debate, right? So those things like that. But the long and the short is, once you get in, and then you're convinced of the Sabbath, and also convinced that nobody else is doing it like them, then they can feed you all the rest of it. And then you'll be
Right.
in sermons, and then you'll hear Sister White says so and so, the inspired pen so and so. Well, who's Sister White? Oh yeah, she's the prophet. Remember, vow 8, number 8, or whatever the case was.
Yep.
And then so they start talking about that and the prophetic timeline and whatever else, and then you get sucked into the vortex. Some of us, well, not say us, but I was born into this, but some folks that come in have a hard time with Ellen White, at the beginning, but then at the end of the day, what else are you going to do if you get force fed that every single Sabbath that you go to church, and also every day that you go and look into your Sabbath school books? Because on Friday evening, what's the Friday lesson? It is Ellen White quotes and reflection on what you had studied during the week, and then that would encourage additional reading. Okay, so that's kind of how that works. So you have the entering wedge, so to speak, of the health message for some people. You have the entering wedge of the Sabbath, be convicted of the Sabbath, and so forth like that, and then all of a sudden all the rest of it comes in. So a lot of people just want
Right.
Jesus, right? But then it's dangled, Jesus is dangled in front of you, and like a Trojan horse, all the rest of it comes in.
Facts.
That's correct.
So notice quickly in passing, he mentioned, quote, he said, God knows their heart, talking about people in other denominations, and still
Hmm.
answers their prayers, even though they may be theologically wrong on some things. Okay, folks, I'm going to read a very long quote here.
Got it.
Please bear with me. I'm going to set up what Ellen is talking about here, and then I'm going to read it. I want you to pay very close attention. This is what Ellen said she was shown in vision about people who rejected their unique 1844 doctrine of the investigative judgment. This is Doug's prophetess, who speaks with prophetic authority. Not Doug, not Mark Finley, not Ted Wilson, not Ivor Myers, Ellen White. Quote, I saw the Father rise from the throne and in a flaming chariot go into the Holy of Holies within the veil and sit down. Then Jesus rose up from the throne, and the most of those who were bowed down arose with him, talking about themselves. I did not
Mhm.
see one ray of light pass from Jesus to the careless multitude after he arose. So, this was talking about the people who rejected their novel message,
Mhm.
and they were left in perfect darkness. Those who arose when Jesus did, talking about themselves, kept their eyes fixed on him as he left the throne and led them out a little way. Then he raised his right arm, and we heard his lovely voice saying, Wait here, I'm going to my Father to receive the kingdom. Keep your garments spotless, and in a little while I will return from the wedding and receive you to myself. Then a cloudy chariot with wheels like flaming fire, surrounded by angels, came to where Jesus was. He stepped into the chariot and was borne to the holiest, where the Father sat. Remember, folks, this is in 1844 that this is supposedly happening.
Mm-hmm.
There I beheld Jesus, a great high priest, standing before the Father. On the hem of his garment was a bell and a pomegranate. A bell and a pomegranate. That's the Levitical priesthood garb. Those who rose up with Jesus themselves would send up their faith to him in the holiest and pray, "My Father, give us thy Spirit." Then Jesus would breathe upon them the Holy Ghost. In that breath was light, power, and much love, joy, and peace. Now, here's the kicker, folks. Pay very close attention. I turned to look at the company who were still bowed before the throne, the people that rejected Ellen White's fanaticism. They did not know that Jesus had left it, talking about the throne in supposedly the holy place. Jesus had gotten up and gone into the most holy place for the first time, and they, rejecting the message, were still now stuck speaking to Jesus in the holy place. I saw them, they did not know that Jesus had left it, talking about the holy place. Satan appeared to be by the throne, trying to carry on the work of God. I saw them look up to the throne and pray, "Father, give us thy Spirit." Satan would then breathe upon them in unholy influence. In it, there was light and much power, but no sweet love, joy, and peace. Satan's object was to keep them deceived and to draw back and deceive God's children.
Mhm.
Close quote. Don't give me this nonsense that your church teaches, that people in all other denominations, oh, no, God's people are spread out. No. Your own prophetess just said, unless you want to say, and even if this is the case, this doesn't make it better. Even if you want to say, no, Ellen was only talking about the people in their day that rejected it, not people like me, CMB, EJ, who know that this is total nonsense and not biblical. Don't give me this
Miles,
nonsense. What's that?
Miles, you're taking it out of context.
Oh, yeah. I know that. I know. I only read about
Well,
800 words.
you just read probably 4 or 5 paragraphs,
Yeah.
and I bet you right now that is the standard as the apologetic Edwin
Yeah, because it's
Cotto,
embarrassing. Because it's
Jason Smith,
embarrassing.
Jason Thomas, whoever it is right now. You've just read the equivalent of probably 3 pages to get the context.
It is. It's pages
And I
54 through
bet you the only
54.
thing left to say, you took it out of context, man.
Mhm.
You're taking it out of context.
It was 3 pages, early writings, pages 54 through 56. Go and check
Sir.
that out yourself, folks. The people that
Man,
rejected
it's
this
crazy.
nonsensical, novel, fanatic doctrine of the 19th century of a woman who supposedly was receiving vision in the corner of the room with a dunce cap on, who
Mhm.
wasn't able to even understand scripture when it was just being discussed, not even the plain didactic teaching passages of the Bible.
Mhm.
Yet she's supposedly given a vision from God of Jesus getting up off of a throne in the holy place. The
And
same
Satan is there.
and not
Satan
yeah, and not
assumes
just
his throne and position.
and not just that, but I've heard Adventists that want to criticize non-Adventists as being, serving and worshiping a mean, vindictive, evil God. Adventists, your own God allows Satan, if this whole system is true, I don't agree that there's a throne in the holy place and this getting up, but in an internal critique,
Mhm.
your own prophetess here says Satan is allowed to come in, assume the first throne, and then God leaves the people to be deceived and pray to him. And then he allows them, or he allows Satan a level of authority to breathe on them and deceive them.
Here's the part that's frightening for me, right? Let's just say that Ellen White is right in this vision. I don't believe that for a second, but let's just say, what attributes would Satan have to hear the prayers of myriads and myriads of people? He'd have to be omniscient, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
He would have to
Mhm.
be able to hear and understand what people are saying in their hearts. Okay? The Satan that appears in this vision has attributes of God. And if that's not
Yeah.
Antichrist, I don't know what is.
He's
This woman,
also omnipotent, who answer all of their prayers as well.
All of them, right?
yeah, it grinds my gears, man. It's just like the blasphemy. This woman always finds a way to make Satan the tragic hero.
Right.
He's always inserted in places he doesn't belong, that the Bible doesn't speak on, yet she's constantly talking about Satan stuff.
And refer to him as a satanic majesty and all this nonsense.
Yeah,
Like,
that he was,
why?
and that he was the next highest in authority to the Son of God. Just crazy, man.